Mesdames et messieurs, j'ai le plaisir de vous d'introduire à Louise Binder. Elle est avocate de profession et a reçu un diagnostic de séropositivité en 1993. Elle a cessé de travailler en 1994 à cause de sa maladie. Avec l'amélioration de sa santé en 1996, elle s'est jointe au conseil d'administration de nombreux organismes œuvrant dans le domaine de le VIH. Elle est présidente et cofondatrice du Conseil canadien de surveillance et d'accès au traitement. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Louise Binder. Louise is a lawyer diagnosed with HIV in 1993. Due to her disease, she stopped work in 1994. She served on boards of many HIV organizations. Once her health improved in 1996, she co-founded and chaired the Canadian Treatment Action Council, which does systematic advocacy to access of treatments. Ladies and gentlemen, Louise Binder.
Good morning. I don't have time to tell you all of my connections with mental health. And maybe I'll have a chance over lunch, but I assure you it's very much close to my heart and personally, and also professionally, because I can't tell you how connected mental health issues are with HIV issues. So how many of you think that you're a disruptive innovator? Put up your hands if you think you're a disruptive innovator. All of you, put up your hands. All of you, put up your hands. Thank you. You are absolutely, every one of you, just by being here, disruptive innovators. So if people ever ask you what you do, that's all you need to tell them. And I'm also a disruptive innovator, and I have been for the last 20 years. They used to call me something else, but since they've coined this term, they're having a difficult time going back to the old one. So I want to say one thing to you, and if you don't listen to anything else I say, that's okay, although I hope you will, and that is you can do anything you set your mind to. I want you to know that. And if you don't believe me, I am living proof of that. I lived for 20 years when I was told I was going to live for 2. I helped change the healthcare system in this country so that we could get drugs for people with HIV when they were dying in the streets. You can disagree with this if you want, but I think history proves me right. I helped to get HIV drugs paid for by all the provinces except some of the eastern provinces, which will remain nameless. And they're east of here, though. It might give you a little hint. And I, 2 years ago, led a campaign to convince the Toronto Hospital to start doing liver transplants for people with HIV, which they had been refusing to do because they said it was too difficult for them to do it. And in fact, the reality was they were doing liver transplants for people with hepatitis C, which is at least 10 times more infectious for the surgeon than HIV would ever be. And we've had 2 successful liver transplants for people who were co-infected with hepatitis C and HIV as a result of that work. And it didn't happen with a lot of money. That's the other thing I want you to fundamentally believe. This is, for you, this is not going to be about a lot of money. And if you continue to say to yourselves and to say to others, we could do this if we had this kind of money, you can kind of, give it up. Because you're not going to get the money, but you don't need a lot. You can do so much with so little. And I'm going to try to tell you a few of the tips for success that I think we've had in the HIV community, and I'm really proud to be part of that community. And I'm not supposed to be, remember, because we're frightening and stigmatized and discriminated against and awful people, but I don't feel awful, and I don't think any of the people that I've met with HIV are awful either. In fact, they're a lot nicer than a lot of other people I've met in my travels. How many of you believe that those stakeholders involved in health actually think that health is about providing services within a human rights framework to people who require those services. How many people in this room believe that's what health is about in this country? Anybody believe that? Well, you're smarter than I was 20 years ago, let me tell you. How many of you believe that HIV and AIDS and mental health, and in fact all the health issues, are actually about politics? How many people believe that? Very wise. How many of you believe that diseases, illness, and health are about economics? How many people believe that? Very wise. And how many people believe that health, for many of the stakeholders, is actually about the law and liability? Oh, you're going to have to learn that one. That's a big lesson for all of you to learn. And with all due respect to the medical profession in the room, I'm afraid one of the things that I've learned over the last 20 years is that the first thing my doctor worries about is his or her liability if I do or don't do what they suggest. And the second is whether it actually does me any good or not. So those are the three main things that health is for most stakeholders, other than, guess who? The patients, if you can imagine. We actually believe that health is about looking after people who need it, whether it's mental health or physical health, whatever kind of health it may be, within a human rights framework. We actually believe that, okay? So you keep believing that, though. Don't give up that belief, because that's what it should be. It should not be politics. It should not be economics. And it should not be whether somebody's going to get sued if I happen to get sick because of some medications that they give me. It shouldn't be about that. But I also want you to remember that health is about those other three things for the other stakeholders. Because when you work with those stakeholders, you have to play to their tune. Okay? So, and this, really, don't ever forget this if you can possibly keep it in the front of your mind. So, for instance, when we did our liver transplant work, we built a business case. Not a case for humanity and saving lives. Hardly mentioned that, actually. It was just a byproduct of the whole experience. We actually developed an economic business case as to why Toronto Hospital would make money doing liver transplants for people with HIV. So if I can, and of course, we reminded, so we met their economic need. We met their political need by warning them that if we didn't get what we wanted, that we would make this a public issue, and that the politicians might be embarrassed by what the hospital was doing, and they might be forced to do it instead of doing it themselves. And that's another thing that's very important. Always give the stakeholder you want to do something the chance to do the right thing. I notice this, many of my colleagues in other of the disease areas, in the political, when they want to use politics as a way to get something done, and I used to do this too, that's why I'm telling you this, so you can avoid my years of embarrassment, would go to the opposition parties, okay, and embarrass the government, and you thought that was going to get you what you wanted. It's the last thing that will get you what you want. It's the last thing, I'm sorry. You've got to get the people who really want to make points, and with whom you want to make points, make it a win-win. Make everything you do, if you can, a win-win. A win-win politically for them, a win-win economically for them, and a win-win legally for them. And I've used the law too. I've threatened people with mandatory injunctions. You probably don't even know what that is, and don't worry about it. You can call me if you need to know. But you know that if they didn't keep people on their medications when they promised they would, and they took them off them, that we would go to court, we would get mandatory injunctions forcing them to keep them on the medications, or we'd sue them for damages for whatever happened to these people's health. So these are all that you've got to play to your audience. Okay, and your three audiences, I'm telling you, will be political audiences, economic audiences and people who are worried about the law. But you play it always from a place of morality and a human rights framework. That's your role. So you can play their cards, you can work with their cards, but you never play it from their vantage point. You play it from yours, which is a place of moral high ground and ethics and human rights for all people. So that's what I believe, and I believe that if you play your cards from where you sit, but you understand the needs of the other stakeholders, you can do almost anything. I really believe that, and I hope that you will believe me. Okay, so what are some of the tips for success? I've already given you some, but I'm going to go through some others. I'm sure that no one in this room would believe that I don't believe that nothing about you without you, okay? The HIV community took that slogan on early on. Nothing about me without me. So if you're developing networks, even including and specifically research networks, don't be fooled into thinking that you can only give input into how those networks are developed or how the research is done. You, as the patient, as the person, or the consumer, I don't like that term. Some people use it. I don't use it. I'm a patient. That's the way it is. I'm a very impatient patient. So if you are the person who's got the mental health issues, problems, whatever you challenges, things to work around, whatever you call them, if you're the person in the center, nothing about you without you. And you hold that dear always. And there was a talk a little bit earlier, questions about family and friends. Absolutely. None of us, I really like the sort of idea of it being, holding us up, because it does. I couldn't have done the things that I've been able to do without support from others. I don't pretend that I could. and I thank them every day, including all my friends in the gay community who really were so courageous early on in our epidemic. You've got an epidemic too. It's different, but it's a lot the same. So yes, you want your family and friends in, and they all mean so well, and they all want to help. But they never know what you know. They never feel what you feel. They never experience what you experience. And so there should be absolutely no work done in research or anywhere else that does not integrally include the people who are impacted by that research. And they have to have meaningful involvement, and they have to be part of the decision-making from the first research question that's determined until the implementation and the monitoring and evaluation of whatever that research is. If you move away from that model, you do not get a good outcome. You get the outcome that everybody else wants, but not the outcome that you need. So we learned that early. We took over the HIV agenda, and it served us very well, I can assure you. Results, not glory. That's the second thing I really want you to keep in mind, okay? Hardly anybody, outside of a few people I talk to from time to time, know that my organization took the lead in getting that liver transplant work. Some people in our community know, but most people in the world have no idea. They don't need to. I am satisfied by the fact that it got done, and I'm satisfied by the fact that there are 2 people walking around alive today, and many more over time, as a result of that work, rather than Queen's medals and, really, they're nice, but really, what I want are results for my community, and I want my community to say thank you to me from time to time when they see me on the street. Thanks for the good work. Thanks for helping. If you're looking for glory, first of all, you don't get much, because I can tell you the fights we have within our own community, and I'm sure the fights you have within your own community, are profound, and everybody's along a continuum, and that's just the way it's always going to be. So hold on to your own moral integrate your own moral substance and determine what it is and stick with it. But don't expect you're going to get a lot of glory out of this, because that's not what it's about. You'd better be in it just because the results are enough for you. The third thing that we learned very early on is you better decide to carve up the landscape, because there is so much work to be done. The very fact that all of you are in this room tells me that you know there's profound gaps that need to be filled. Profound. And you won't fill them all right away, which is another lesson that I learned early. So just to say on this point, if, some of you should really consider research of one kind, and some of you consider research of another kind, and then develop your expertise in that area. So people in the HIV community know that if they want to know a lot about prevention stuff, they don't really call me. I'm not the prevention expert in HIV. We have other organizations that are and can tell you, chapter and verse about that. If they want to know about treatments and access to treatments and advocacy for access to treatments, they do call me. And they know that what I know will be the state-of-the-art, up-to-date information about that, because that's where I've decided to focus. And I think all of you will need to think about that. Don't try to all do the same thing. Split yourselves up. You'll get a lot more done. You'll be a lot more effective. You'll be able to be seen in a lot more places, at a lot more decision-making tables. And really, your money will go a lot farther, too. And then have respect for this is certainly, we do this, too, in our community. I respect the decisions and the input from the prevention people about prevention issues. I let them take the lead. They tell me this petition needs signing because there's real problems with this issue on prevention. I believe them. If I send them something and say we need to do something about this treatment issue, they believe me. So you should really think about that, because you'll get so much more done. You'll be seen in so many more places, and that's a key, is being seen as go-to people in the area that you're working in. So my next point is you have nothing to fear but fear itself. I don't actually give a rat's if you like me or not. I actually don't. If you invite me to your Christmas party, it's good. You don't, it's okay too. People don't like people with HIV mostly. They haven't liked us since the beginning. They helped us at the beginning because we were dying, and we were fairly young people dying, and that was a bad thing. And so people at least were able to rally to that. But the minute they read in 1996 that there were treatments for us, instantly we were off the radar. And honestly, we've been off the radar ever since. And they don't want us around. So that's fine with me. You don't want me around. All I ask, if you do want me around, and I've actually been very fortunate, a lot of people do, that's wonderful. But the more important thing is that you do what you are paid to do for me. So if your role is housing, you get me housing. I don't care if you like me or not. If your role is education and getting people scholarships and ways of getting into schools, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like that I have HIV. You can think whatever you want about me. You're paid to do that, do it. And so that is the most important thing. The person that should respect you the most is yourself. And if other people come along to the party, that's a great thing. And if they don't, that's tough. All that you need to tell them is, I really don't care. Your job is this. You're paid to do this. Do this. And I can't tell you that strongly enough. Come on, start out with the assumption that maybe they'll be the exception to the rule and they won't find you scary and all this sort of stuff. But if it comes right down to it and it's very clear to you that they don't like you very much, don't worry about it, okay? Don't ever let that stand in your way to getting your entitlements, which is to be treated to the health care that's available in this country in a way that is done within a human rights framework, which means you at the center. So you just keep that in mind, and believe me, you will get a fan club. You will still have a fan club. It may not be some people, but other people will think you're just fine. Stick with your core business. This is something I strongly recommend to you. This is a mistake we made in the HIV world early on. The mistake was, am I supposed to be wrapping up? I'm wrapping up. But this is really an important point for you. So I've got to finish it, and then I'll try to finish. I've got 5 minutes. All right. You know, the minute somebody had HIV, we did everything for them, honestly. We helped them find housing, we helped them find employment, we helped them get into schools, we helped them with the legal system, we've helped them with everything. That was a fundamental mistake. Because housing people are given money in the government to help with housing for everybody. People who work in the employment area and all the other social determinants of health, social networks, all of that, don't fall into the trap that we did, which was taking over the work of other jurisdictions and not having the money to do it, but doing it anyhow. Instead, what you want to do, if you can do it by friendly partnerships, always the best way. Always. To get, and then your role within that partnership is to explain to people about housing for people with your particular issues. What are the discrete things they need to keep in mind there, or in employment, or in training, or in education? Okay, you are the advising partner. Don't become the principal partner when somebody else has the money to do what they're supposed to be doing for you. Stick to your knitting and be the advisors to everyone else, and hold them to their account. Hold them to account. Don't let them slough it off on you. Don't let them do the I don't know anything about this. Well, learn something. So be very careful about that. Get the best partnerships you can. They're going to be different with politicians than they're going to be with bureaucrats. And please learn the difference between politicians and bureaucrats. They're profoundly different. The things that move them and shake them and are interesting to them and make them do the work they do is totally different. So it's something that took me a long time to learn, but I have learned it. Make friends with the private sector. Make friends with funders. But I want to remind you of one thing, and that is, while you may make friends with these folks, you always speak from your voice, not from what any of them want you to do, not ever. Even if you have to walk away from money, even if you have to walk away from partnerships, you must always be seen as having only one person and group in mind, and those are those people with mental health questions and problems and issues and challenges that they need you to help them with. Don't ever, ever speak with anybody else's voice. It's that unique voice that nobody else can give, and it gives you credibility. And I may not go to a lot of Christmas parties, but people certainly know I'm credible, and they know when I say to them, the HIV community thinks this about this treatment issue. They know she can mobilize them if she has to. So I'm pretty much done. Build a business case, I've told you that. Remember politics, law, and economics. And as I've said also, start with one thing at a time. When we started CTAC, we just took on one issue. There were tons of treatment access issues. We took on one. I said, let's take on one, and let's pick on something that's kind of, quote, low-hanging fruit, but really important. For us, it was getting Health Canada to agree to fast-track HIV drugs for approval. And we just hammered away on that for about 2 years until we got it. And then we started to move into the provinces and talk to them. You've got to build your credibility. You've got to build a knowledge or a sense that you Don't go away. And that's the most important thing. The one thing that happens when I phone someone or write to them, they think, oh man, you know, she doesn't go away. You know, like someone else, I could write them a polite letter. I'll send it to somebody and they'll do something sometime and they'll go away. She just doesn't go away. Don't go away. Doesn't matter how many no's you've got. Never go away. Keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. You never know when the crack in the wall will happen. And the most important time cracks in the wall happen, watch for this in the news, election time. Get out there at election time. Get the promises. Make the public statements. That's very important. Scandal time. If they've got scandals, they don't want more. You know, really, you got to look for, you know, just the right moments. Sometimes you wait 2 years. I've waited 20 years for post-approval surveillance in this country, and somebody woke up a few weeks ago and said, oh, gee, we don't have post-approval surveillance in this country. We better do something about that. I've been talking about it for 20 years. So, you know, don't ever go away. So that's enough for now, and I'm happy to talk more about some of the things we've learned and done. I just want to remind you who you are. You're disruptive innovators. Stay that way. Don't ever give that up. That is the most important role you can ever play in life. Thanks so much.
Questions for Louise. So does anyone have a question that they'd like to pose? Anyone? Yep.
Thank you, Mirelle.
No, Louise.
Yeah, probably a lot of us know this already, but can you talk a little bit more about the differences between politicians and bureaucrats?
Absolutely. Politicians come and go. So what they're mostly interested in is staying as long as possible. So they think in very short time frames, and so they want, you know, they want instant gratification. And they want to look good publicly. It's very important for them to look good publicly so that they get reelected. But you have to watch very carefully with politicians because they have to get the sense that what you want them to do is actually going to do them good at the polls and not poorly at the polls. So you have to find ways to really gratify them quite instantly. And to be willing to do things that are going to assist them in staying in their roles as much as you can. Even if it's just by promising not to shout at them at election time, that, you know, that's worth something to them, actually. Bureaucrats, I love them, actually. I've come to love the bureaucrats. It took me forever to actually know what makes bureaucrats tick. And I'm not sure I do still. Except that, remember, they really want to be old-time civil servants. You know, they actually really aspire to service to the community. And so you have to, they're there forever. So you, in many cases, be careful not to go past your bureaucrat to your politician, because that politician's going to go and that bureaucrat's going to be there and is going to remember you did that. So, I mean, sometimes you have to and you do it, but they will never forget you for the good or the bad. And to the extent that you can build it, what you want with your bureaucrat is to build an ongoing relationship of trust, ongoing. I do believe that I have over time earned that with Health Canada to the point where I'm embarrassed to admit that I'm actually in a partnership now. I mean, I used to be shouting at them, and now I'm actually in a partnership. That's where I was yesterday. I was in Boston delivering a paper for Health Canada because one of their folks was unable, one of the folks that was supposed to represent them couldn't be there. And I thought, well, You know, if you live long enough, anything will happen. And I'm actually in a partnership with them and with an arthritis patient, developing a treatment guide for patients about what questions to ask your doctors in your treatments, benefits, harms, uncertainties, other questions, clinical trials, all of that. And Health Canada and we are partners on this enormous, it's actually an enormous project, and we're really excited about it, and the FDA is really excited about it. So how did they come to me finally? I mean, to work on this, which they did. I didn't go to them. Because I built up years and years of trust with those bureaucrats. I warned them. I always warn people when I'm going to do something. Always. And it's never a threat, and I always go through with it. But I always give people the courtesy to know, by the way, we're having a media conference tomorrow. Here's what it's about. You may get a call about it. Be ready. And they appreciate that. They respect that. So learn to build that kind of relationship. With politicians, it's always, what's the word I want to use? It's always just what's good for them at the moment. It's not, you're not building much of anything, frankly. You're just, you know, what does he need today, or she? You know, like a baby bird, what worm do they need for me to get what I need? It's a very different kind of relationship, for sure.
Great. Louise, thank you so much. We've run out of time. We're going to have to present. Are you around for lunchtime? Are you?
Yeah, I can stick around if some of you think that would be helpful. I'd be glad to.
We can offer you some food and drink
That's
upstairs.
pretty
That would
good.
be great. Is that an incentive?
That's enough.
We'd like you to
enough.
come and dine with us. You come to our party.
Thank
said
you. I
we're
love
inviting you
parties.
to our party upstairs.
I love parties.
We're going to party at lunchtime. So a round of applause.